I think it's a fact. This dude was murdered. This dude was assassinated. It's just like a question of who.
That was not a suicide. That's
Oh
impossible.
yeah, dude. I mean, even nowadays, like in little local towns and stuff, police are involved. Yeah. Police cover stuff up. You know what I mean? Like things happen and police cover up murders all the time. And we're not talking about just a drug dealer that had a connection with a local mayor. We're talking about this dude who was like a governor.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. So like, yeah, it obviously people could have covered this up.
Oh, definitely.
Welcome. This is the Arcane Dialogue. I'm John.
I'm Josh.
And today we have Stan. How you doing, Stan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Stan has a YouTube channel called Gaming Exploration. I'm going to add that into the description below. But today he has a conspiracy that he's going to share with us. So you want to give us a little overview about what you believe?
Yeah. I'm from Germany, and in the 80s, there was a politician called Uwe Barschel. He was governor from Schleswig-Holstein. For people who don't know what that is the northern part of Germany, right at the Danish border. And he got into a scandal spying on his opponent, and then resigned. And then a few days after resigning, he died in Geneva in a bathtub under very mysterious circumstances. And in Germany, there's a debate raging, was it a suicide? Was it a murder? Did he have assisted suicide? Was a helper there? And I lean strongly towards the idea that he was murdered.
What was the overall, like, from the news that was going on at the time? What is the public opinion? Did most people believe that it was just by accident?
No, it was not an accident. So people initially believed he committed suicide, 80%, but nowadays about 50% believe it was murder, about 20% suicide, the rest has no opinion on it.
Okay, great. Well then, I guess let's dive into it. I do have a little thing here, just in case I get his name wrong. Uwe Barschel, right?
Correct.
All right.
Uwe Barschel.
I have a little thing about him. He was a prominent member of Germany's Christian Democrat Union, CDU, and served as the Minister-President. You also said what we would call a governor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And from 1982 until 1987, at just 38, so he was the youngest person to hold that office. His political... He still was?
Yeah, he still holds that record.
Wow. His political career was marked by ambition and rapid ascent within the CDU ranks, and his tenure ended abruptly amid a major political scandal, which is what you talked about earlier. So you want to go ahead and break it down for us? Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So to kind of understand the scandal, you have to understand the kind of political culture that existed in Germany in the 80s. And it's kind of similar to how it is today in the United States, very polarizing, very divisive. And especially the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats did not like each other. They had mistrust of each other. Almost hatred, almost. And so Uwe Barschel, he's the first-term governor of Schleswig-Holstein. He's a popular guy, but as the state elections come around in 1987, it's predicted to be a close race. And this is a huge problem for him because the Christian Democrats had governed for 37 years straight. So if he would lose... That would be a big embarrassment, and he would be in big trouble. Maybe his career would have been over. And so his opponent is a guy called Björn Engholm. He is former education minister of Germany, and he's a very popular leader of the opposition. I've read some articles of the time who describe him as suave, charismatic, a good orator, and he has, sky-high approval ratings. And what happens is the Christian Democrats lose a string of local races in 1986, and they developed a strategy against Engholm, which is to smear him and drag his name through the mud. And so the election in 1987 is a very nasty election, very negative. Just to give you a sense of how negative it was, at one point, the Christian Democrats accused the Social Democrats of wanting to legalize sex with children.
Wow.
And the Social Democrats at one point said the Christian Democrats are in the tradition of National Socialist spirit, which is a serious accusation in Germany.
Yeah.
And At the end of 1986, Barschel hires a media advisor called Rainer Pfeiffer, and he is supposed to look Engholm look bad. And so he does a number of illicit and illegal things. Number one, he hires a detective agency to spy on Engholm, looking for extramarital affairs or even gay contacts, which, being gay in the 80s would have tanked your career as a politician. And at one point, he calls Engholm, impersonating his doctor, and tells him that he has AIDS.
Oh my gosh. What in the world?
Yeah. He also, it's crazy. He also reports an anonymous complaint to the tax authorities, accusing Engholm of withholding his taxes and, doing tax evasion.
So this guy's just playing dirty. He's just trying to do everything he can instead of just trying to win the people's vote. He's just trying to win by pushing this guy down.
Yeah.
Dirty.
And the last thing he did, or doesn't do, but it's talked about, is he tries to wiretap Uwe Barschel's phone in order to accuse the Social Democrats of doing so. But he can't find a wire, so he doesn't go through it.
Wow.
But, and then on the 31st of May in 1987, something unexpected happens. Uwe Barschel's plane crashes, and he survives as the only one. And obviously, after his death, people looked into this. Is there, any evidence that this plane was sabotaged? And there is no evidence of that. But there is something mysterious about the plane crash, which is, according to Barschel, and this is also in the radio that the pilot signaled, he was blinded by a mysterious light. And the pilot, because of that, he flies too low too quickly and crashes into a radio tower. And so, hard to say what happened, but probably an accident.
And this was a mistake, or correct me if I'm wrong. The plane crash, it was kind of towards the end of his role in the government, right? Or was it kind of in the middle?
Yeah. It was 8 weeks before the election.
Okay.
So he's not 8 weeks, it's 10 weeks, I think. But he spends 8 weeks in the hospital. And obviously the Social Democrats continue to campaign. So they're not lead, but they're tightening the polls. They're getting closer and closer to winning.
That's definitely a big coincidence, I would say. I know wild things happen all the time, but that is a very wild coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly sometimes life brings these strange things to surface.
Yeah,
and Barschel obviously he campaigns, and then a day before the election, the German magazine Der Spiegel publishes a cover story reporting on Pfeiffer's dirty campaign tactics, laying everything out, what he did. And while they have little evidence, they have a important crown witness, and that is Rainer Pfeiffer himself. He claims Barschel told him what to do, and he masterminded everything, and he was just following orders.
Was he a good guy? Like, was he like the winning, like he was the winning side, or was it more of like what he was saying was out of pocket? You know what I'm saying?
Barschel,
yeah.
It depends who you ask, because again, if you're more on the political left, he was evil. If you're not, he's seen in a better light.
Okay, so I could see like how it's kind of like here, right? Like no one's gonna judge a Republican politician based on his character. You know what I mean? They're either like, I'm a Republican, I agree with him, or I'm a Democrat and he's the devil. Yeah. So like I would imagine it's the same thing. It's hard to judge a politician neutrally on their character.
Do we know if he made any statements that came out that were true, that made the political side look bad? Like they didn't want the people to know?
He doesn't attack Engholm like directly. He uses kind of vague stuff about how the Social Democrats are super far left and you should be careful who you vote for. He doesn't directly attack him.
Okay.
But the thing is, if the fact that Barschel, how much he knew about it is something that will get into questions later, but it's certainly there are different people who have said different things about this.
Okay, and Barschel, we would say progressive then. He's more progressive, or was he more?
No, he was very conservative.
Very conservative. Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say they say democratic, so we try to link it, but it also says Christian, so I'd imagine very conservative. The
thing is, the Christian Democrat are a center-right party, I would say, but at the time in Schleswig-Holstein, they were more to the right.
How many political parties do y'all have?
Nowadays we have a lot. There's always new ones, but back then they had 4 main ones. They had the Christian Democrats, the Social Democrats, those are the big 2. Then you had 2 smaller parties, the Greens and the Free Democrats, which is like a libertarian type party.
That's pretty cool. I always think we should have more than just 2 major ones.
Don't we have 3, right?
Yeah, but they're not
Zionist.
They're pretty much nobody would ever vote for them.
Okay. What was something that Barschel knew? What was something that he knew that, in your conspiracy, in your belief, in your theory, what is something he knew that couldn't get out?
Well, Barschel, I would go into this later, but I can talk about it now. He was involved in, this is not me speculating, there's evidence for that. He was involved in weapons contract, arms dealerships and stuff like that. Now, he didn't directly buy weapons or stuff like that, but he put people in touch with each other. So he knew how to establish contacts, and he was involved in arms dealing, at least what we know in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Behind the Iron Curtain. And there's speculation he also was involved in the Middle East.
I did read a few of those. It seemed like there was 3 or 4 good reasons of why somebody would want him to take him out.
Yeah, he was more than just some local politician who, I don't know, was involved in.
It makes sense though that this guy, after you've described his character, trying to play dirty, smear, and do all this stuff, I would imagine this guy probably got his hands dirty. He was probably into all kinds of nasty stuff.
Yeah, I would go into that a little bit later, just to stay in the timeline.
Yeah.
If that's okay?
Yeah.
And so they really remember Der Spiegel releases this major story about how Barschel plays dirty and does all of these things, and Barschel hits back saying the article is, quote, erstunken und erlogen, which basically means it reeks of lies. And the Christian Democrats accused the paper of left-wing campaign journalism, but the thing is, before the election, the Christian Democrats stick to Barschel and defend him. That changes after the election. So what happens is they lose, but even though the Social Democrats win the election, they are missing 2 seats to govern, which means they need a third party. And the Free Democrats are this third party that came in. And the Free Democrats, they only agree to work with the Christian Democrats, but only if they drop Barschel. And so, or Barschel clears his name. That's basically what they said. And so, 5 days after the election, Barschel gives this is a well-known press conference in Germany. And you know how there's sometimes quotes from politicians which everybody remembers?
Yeah.
He makes one of those quotes. I don't want to get too much into it, but he denies all charges. And not just says they're all wrong. He goes point by point why they're wrong. He then claims there's a plot to take him out. He then produces affidavits from all his staff members professing of his innocence, and ends the conference with the famous words, "I want to go above and beyond and give the people of Schleswig-Holstein and the entire German public my word of honor. I repeat, I give you my word of honor that the accusations against me are baseless." And it was a huge deal at the time because people tended to, in those days, trust politicians a lot more than today.
Yeah, same here. Same on our side of the ocean.
Yeah. The problem, of course, with his word of honor, 2 days later, it is revealed that he had personally called the tax authorities to ask about the anonymous complaint filed against Engholm, which means he knew something, which means he lied at the press conference. So what happens then is the Schleswig-Holstein Parliament starts a parliamentary inquiry into the affair, and he is scheduled on Monday 2 weeks later. And he resigns the governorship, and then he goes on holiday at the Canary Islands. But he spends most of the holiday making phone calls to party officials about his innocence and that he won't clear his name. And he then gets a mysterious call from someone he calls Robert Roloff. And Roloff claims to have evidence that Pfeiffer is a plant by the Social Democrats, and he wanted to give Barschel a photo with proof. And he then learns that there are criminal investigations into his conduct and that the Christian Democrats want to kick him out of the party. So he decides to meet Roloff in Fight for His Legitimacy in Geneva. But the thing is, this is what is mysterious. He books a flight to Zurich first, wanting to meet him there. But the flights are all booked out. So he says, well, I'll go to Geneva and his informant can meet him anywhere. And then he tells his wife of the meeting and says goodbye with the words, it's not like they're going to shoot me, okay? And yeah, and then 24 hours later, he is dead.
That's insane.
If you want to, I can go into what he did in the last 24 hours.
Let's get into that.
What do you do? Yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
So at 8 o'clock, he leaves in the morning from the Canary Islands. On his way to the airport, he gets 2 dolls from his daughters. And then at the last minute, he gets into his flight in the last minute. And we don't know where he was for 2 hours. And then on the flight, he starts taking notes about his meetings with Roloff, what he plans to do in Switzerland, that he wants to see his kids, visit the circus, and also his strategy for the inquiry. And then he notes down that he wants to meet Roloff at the Geneva airport, but he's surprised there. When he arrives at 10 after 3, he is ambushed by Swiss journalist Frank Gabeli at the airport, and so Barschel pretends not to speak German, heads into a cab, and drives off. The journalist tries to follow him, but the cab driver refuses to do so, so he can't follow him. And then, even though it's only 20 minutes to the Hotel Beau Rivage where he is staying, he arrives like over an hour later, and so no one knows what he did for 40 minutes at the way to the hotel. And then at 4:30, Barschel goes into room 317, and it's not clear if he spends the entire time in his room, or if he has someone outside, or if he meets someone in his room. At around 20 minutes before 6, he calls his wife, telling her that he met Roloff and everything went great, and that they meet again in the evening. Then at 6, he calls his sister, has a long conversation with her, also talks about meeting Roloff and meet him again. Interestingly, he calls his brother at after 6:30, and then again after 20 minutes after 7, and he lies to his brother, claiming to be at the Hilton Hotel, and he doesn't want to talk about. And so his brother is angry and pesters him about, what are you doing there? I live close to Geneva, I can come help you out. And so he says to his brother that he's awaiting a, quote, transaction. Someone wants to give him a picture with people on it who shouldn't know each other. And he says that the brother shouldn't come over and that he will meet him in the evening and go to the circus with the family. And if not, he can't make it. He'll be at 9:30 the following day in the morning there at the breakfast.
So I'm sorry, you said he lied to his brother about which hotel he was staying at?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what we also know, right after his first conversation with his brother at 6:30, sorry, a room service guy comes in with a bottle of expensive wine and 2 glasses, which Barschel had ordered. The guy claims that Barschel tasted the wine and wasn't wearing a tie and jacket, even though he was found in the bathtub, dead wearing a tie. Barschel asks the guy how he could be undisturbed, and he points to the "Don't Disturb" sign. Then, in the early evening, the roommate wants to clean the room, but doesn't clean Barschel's, as there's a "Don't Disturb" sign in front of the room. Barschel, sometime in the evening, notes down his meeting with Roloff. He claims that Roloff told him, quote, a lot about Pfeiffer. At 4 o'clock in the morning, a night portier hears a loud sound as if something heavy fell down. He hears this in one of the top floors. And then at 7 o'clock, a second portier collects the breakfast orders from in front of the rooms. Barschel's room has no order and no "Don't Disturb" sign. When 2 journalists, here it gets even more interesting. when two journalists from Stern magazine who want to interview Barschel walk past the door to get breakfast, the "Don't Disturb" sign is back. And then at 11:30, a waiter enters the room and sees a green makeup room sign in front of the door. He quickly goes past the bathroom where Barschel is probably in, to the mini bar and sees that a little Jack Daniels bottle is missing, which he fills back up with a new one and then leaves. And that's all we know from before he gets found.
And when did he get found? Was it the same day?
Yeah, the same day. The two journalists that I just mentioned that wanted to interview him, they wait for an interview. They wait for him to come down, but he doesn't arrive. So every 2 hours they go to his room, knock on the door, no response. Then at around 12, one of the journalists, Sebastian Knauer, checks the doorknob and finds that it is unlocked. He opens the door and shouts, "Herr Dr. Barschel?" No response. "Anybody there?" Again, no response. He walks in, looks around. The room is unused and has bed is also unused. He sees some notes that Barschel made and calls his boss. And his boss basically says, "Well, go back in and photograph the notes." So 20 minutes later, he goes back in, steals the notes, takes photos in the hallway of the hotel. And then he goes in a third time to put the notes back. And this time he sees that the bathroom door is a smidge open. And he opens the door, looks inside, sees Uwe Barschel dressed in his clothes in the bathtub with warm water in it, and he is already dead.
I thought he was found naked, like taking a bath.
When he was found in the bathtub, how did it look like? What was he like? Did he cut like his arms or like? No. So he was like drowning, maybe, you think, or I'm trying to think of this.
It's a little strange. His body was drowning, but his head was above water.
I was reading on something that there were no water in the lungs, right?
Yeah, he did not drown.
He did not drown.
And I guess the overall opinion is that he, if we can talk about this yet, is that he overdosed, right? That was what they had originally said.
Yes, he overdosed on medication.
Okay.
Was there pill bottles in the room, or
there was not? That's one of the mysteries they were missing.
There's so many weird things, and like I'm just thinking back to the timeline. I kind of want to go over real quick. Like you said, he disappeared for like 40 minutes here and there. Like I don't know if he was like prescribed medication, or maybe he was like, you know, he was a drug user. He went to go buy drugs or something. But there's just something so weird about the fact that like the door was unlocked in the morning, and like and then after the thud, the door sign changed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
it's strange.
Because I don't know the doors back then, but I would imagine you would have to have a key to lock it from the outside. So if somebody was leaving, they would have like, if they had the key, they would have locked the door back.
And I wonder, was the water still going, or was it stopped?
I think it stopped. I haven't looked into this a lot, but I think it was. I saw an interview with journalists who discovered him, and he says though it was very peaceful. It was very quiet and tranquil almost. So I imagine there was no water that was going.
It's almost weird that the manager wanted to take a picture of the notes, and then you said the person bringing the bottle of wine in right to his room, right? Bottle of wine. That's crazy. Like that could be a correlation with like the manager. Yeah, an assassin.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The interesting thing about the wine bottle is it's also missing. Nobody found this bottle of wine.
That's insane.
And he never left the room again, right? To go throw it away out in the dumpster outside or anything that they know of?
Not that we know of. Maybe it's possible that nobody saw him, but it's a hotel, so it's
and I was reading too about him. Apparently after his plane crash, that he like, you know, if anyone has a near-death experience, it can change everything for you, right? And I did read that he was very like moved by it, and he had like turned his life around, and he was like, you know, life is really important. Like I don't want to die. That was crazy. So like I can't imagine. And they said that he
Lutheran. Barschel was a Lutheran Christian, and he was very spiritual, I would say, from what I've read. And he thought that his plane crash was a miracle from God. You know, that he was still alive.
Like Trump's assassin.
And,
That's Trump's assassination right there,
And he, of course, also thought that the plane crash was an assassination attempt. So,
it would make sense. Because you said that was 10 weeks before.
8.
Or It was 8 weeks before.
No, it was 10 weeks before the
Oh,
election,
yeah.
and then if we stay in the timeline, 12 weeks before his death.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had read some different things. Like it was 9 days after his resignation, that he was found dead. But man, that is so weird. And again, another coincidence. It was during the time of like that he had information that he wasn't supposed to have, right?
Yeah. Again, we don't. It's hard. He had information on deals to apartheid South Africa. That's there's a inquiry into this. That's why. And he may have. People speculate that he was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. That's harder to say, but yeah, one of the reasons why we don't know if his death was a suicide or murder is that the Swiss investigators, after he died, they made a lot of mistakes, and I have to say, like rookie mistakes. To give a few examples, they take photos of the crime scene, but they are too dark and unusable. So hours later, after they took the evidence with them, they go back into the room, place the evidence there, and take the photos again.
Oh my gosh.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then they failed to measure the temperature of the bathwater. Because of that, it can't be determined at what time Barschel dies. They do not perform much background research, failing to find a cab driver that brought Barschel to the hotel. And they also do not research his prior story in the Canary Islands. They also do not document exactly what is in his stomach and in his urine, and throw most of the urine and stomach stuff away, keeping only small samples.
I just think it's like unimportant bits.
Yeah.
They're just like, just trash.
Yeah.
What
then,
in the world?
when they examine the body, they only find one big wound on his left forehead. Even though a later examination by police in Hamburg will conclude that he had several more wounds, including one even larger wound above the right side of the skull and the back of his head. There are large swellings.
That seems pretty important. That seems like an important detail to check out. A head wound.
Yeah. Later on, they also get a piece of hair from someone else, but they later lose it when. So in 2012, they reopened this for DNA to look for DNA evidence.
Yeah.
And they can't find the hair. It's missing.
Oh my gosh. Records management, man.
Yeah.
I think if the Swiss police and also the German police who were assisting them wouldn't have acted as sloppily, we probably would know more about what happened.
Yeah, I would imagine. I'm like, maybe the Swiss at that time, they just didn't have a lot of experience, and like it just played out better. I don't know if they would have been in on it. But
no, I don't think.
Yeah, it's possible they were just all unexperienced.
Yeah. I don't know if they were unexperienced, but they certainly didn't understand what kind of a politician Uwe Barschel was. That he had a major scandal. They were surprised that German TV cameras everywhere, for example. Investigators said that.
And did you say there was a wound on his forehead and also to the back of his skull?
Yeah, but it's not. So the back of his skull has large swellings, and then the wound on the forehead is not. You can't imagine this with blood coming out of there or anything.
Right.
It's a small wound. It's just a little wound.
Yeah. It would be weird, like if he did overdose and he was somehow standing in the bath in a suit, like, and he fell. I would imagine maybe one piece of trauma to the head.
Yeah, but not in the water.
Yeah.
Someone had to lay him there.
Yeah, and maybe not too. And then also you mentioned that there was a loud thump that somebody had heard from his room. Yeah, that's so weird. That is so weird.
So
DNA wasn't
like fingerprints?
Yeah, fingerprint DNA wasn't during that time, right? Or
that's also one of the weird things about the case. There's no fingerprints anywhere except for, remember, he ordered a bottle of wine with 2 glasses.
Yeah.
One of the glasses is destroyed and is in the trash. And then the other one is I'm going to show this on camera if I can.
Yeah. Has
a ring finger print. Let me see if I can do it. Like this. Yeah.
Okay.
What?
That's a very strange position to have fingerprints. That's a strange position to hold a glass.
And that makes me feel like they tried to wipe everything down and wipe to get rid of all the fingerprints, because I'm assuming maybe even his fingerprints weren't there. Like he would have more fingerprints around the room unless somebody came and started cleaning up everything.
If I put myself into his state of mind, let's assume it was a suicide. He's taking a lot of pills. He's drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And he is, as he gets, dizzy and passes out, he torkles around the room, grabbing a bunch of stuff, somehow gets in the bathroom, hits his head. There's no fingerprints.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Especially in a bathtub or a shower, the surface area on that type of like on the shower walls or whatever, that's like you could easily get fingerprints off of that, especially if you're drunk and you're stumbling and you're out, like you're falling out. Yeah. And the room was clean, right? The room was very clean. The inmate said. Yeah,
although to be fair, it's a hotel room, so
But still, if I was like suicidal and I was drunk and on meds, like I feel like I would be like kind of like you don't really care about keeping it clean.
So it had a do not disturb sign, right? And then it did. Then it did not, right? And then it did again, right?
Yeah. And again, it could be that people are misremembering. That's possible, but as far as we know from what said, is the sign changed a couple of times.
Did he not have neighbors in the hotel? We don't know.
I don't think so. No.
This is terrible.
There's just so many things that line up. It's almost like a Wes Anderson film or something. Like it's like it's not funny, but I just mean like there's a lot of like, if there was an actual like assassination and then just like the Swiss police and then just all the things that fell into place, like just made it look like it was perfect.
Yeah.
When they probably really botched it.
Like a bunch of first graders trying to figure out.
Well, I can give you some more information about the crime scene.
Yeah. The fingerprints is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his cause of death is determined to be medical drug poisoning. He had 8 different drugs in his body, 4 of them toxic. And the German authorities, the Swiss initially ruled as a suicide and investigated. And then later, in 1994, German authorities looked into this as a murder. And they looked into if he was addicted to medicine, and that while they come to the conclusion, the report says, that while he's abused medicine called Tavor, which is an anti-anxiety medicine, and Valium, that he wasn't addicted. They also looked into if his sense of judgment had changed because of the drugs he took, and came to the conclusion not. And they also checked his writings and what he said to his family before his death, if he had pre-suicidal judgments, and they found that he didn't. And so the crime scene is the following. When you go into the hallway, you open the door and go into the room. In the hallway, you can see Barschel's right tied together shoe scattered around. The curtains are drawn down. The bed is unused. At the head end of the bed, there's a pajama. On top of it, unused pajama, and on top of it is a book by existential philosopher Jean Paul. On the cupboard, there's Barschel's notes. And then in the bathroom is the body of Barschel. His head is above water and rests on his left hand. He's wearing a shirt with a tie, dress pants, and socks, which are under water. In front of the bath is Barschel's left shoe, which is untied. Next to the shoe is a little rug which has brown stains. The stains, as it turns out, are from the shoes. The shoes were cleaned. This is later examined and proven. Were cleaned with something, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing this, but dimethyl sulfoxide, short DMSO. And what this thing does, you can inject medicine or poison through the skin. So if you use DMSO and mix ketchup with it, you can inject the ketchup into the body directly.
Yeah.
And there's DMSO. There are traces on the towel in the main room next to his suitcase as well. And then German authorities later use UV light and find a footprint of a shoe that has a different than Barschel. However, that can be explained by the journalists being in the room and taking photos.
Yeah,
or the maid. Next to the bath, in the trash can, is a little Jack Daniel's whiskey bottle. And when I say little, I mean a tiny one. It is empty and has been rinsed out from top to bottom. Later, they will find traces of diphenhydramine, which was used at the time as a date rub. So if you had a date rape rub, this diphenhydramine would be in the drug. And it's used that way because it knocks you out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The bottle is too small to inject pills, so the medicine had to be there in liquid form. And then next to the trash can is a broken wine glass. Another wine glass is in the sink intact. And then in the hallway next to Barschel's red shoes is a button which has parts of his shirt on it. And the button, it's the second button I have a shirt on, and it was ripped off like this, from top to bottom. And what's interesting about this button is there is fabric from the shirt on it. So this piece is still on the button.
Yeah.
Which German authorities looked into this and found there has to have been discrete violence used to undo this, basically.
Yeah. Before we move on real quick, I want to hit on a few of those points before I forget.
Yeah.
So the button thing, that shows me like a struggle, right? Right off the rip.
Yeah.
The second weird thing to me, you said there was a broken glass in the trash and there was another one in the sink.
Yeah.
That one is just weird. Like, that's a hard one to wrap my head around, because I was thinking like if I'm drinking alone, I'm not touching the
glasses.
the two glasses. You know what I mean? Unless like one was knocked over, and then like he was cleaned out one, like maybe he was done drinking, cleaned out one, left it in the sink, and then like after the scuffle, maybe one broke. Another weird thing is if somebody came to assassinate him, right? And this is me trying to straw man the argument.
Right.
If somebody came to assassinate this guy, why wouldn't they have taken his notes and the picture? Unless they were just hired as a hitman and they didn't know the full idea of it.
It's possible. Obviously, his notes are in German, and they could have been, from another country, potentially. So they can't read his notes. So they
probably don't know the whole overarching idea of what's going on. You have another guy like, hey, go kill this guy. He's got information on us. They show up, kill him, and they leave. And the job is done. But like the guy that actually knows everything that's going on isn't the one I would imagine assassinating, So it's possible as well that like the assassin didn't know the full story about why he was killing this guy. You know what I mean? He just was getting
possible. Yeah. And then obviously I sometimes think maybe it was more than one person were in his room, because if you're assassinating someone, you're knocking him out with date rape drugs.
Yeah.
You have to carry his body. You can't do that alone. That makes noise.
Yeah, I wonder the maid that came in. I would just wonder if like that could have been the time the assassin like planted the date rape drug or something. But yeah,
I'm thinking the maid was part of it.
You think so?
Really?
I think so.
I mean,
did they interview the maid at all?
Yeah, they did. I haven't read the interview protocols, but she seemed not to know anything.
I don't know, maybe. Another weird thing is too, the thing that makes me think that this has to be an assassination, right? Let's say like you have an important event coming up in your life, right? And like you've been looking forward to it, like you've been like out of ideas, and finally you have an important event coming up, and you have the date, and you take a plane to go, and you're ready to go do this event. And finally you get the thing that you wanted, this photo, and you have these notes and everything, right? And it's like, that's what you went there for. That's what why would that be the moment that you decided to commit suicide? Like after you've won, you've won it, right?
So the suicide and murder thesis, these are very emotionally charged conversations in Germany. And what the people who claim he committed suicide would say to that is he was a filmmaker in his own movie. He staged everything to make it look like it was a murder, to make himself immortal and, go into the history books. Because he was very ambitious and very kind of vain and things like that.
Yeah.
But what for me was a big thing was the Jack Daniels whiskey bottle. If you're drinking Jack Daniels and somehow you got pills into the Jack Daniels and you're drinking it, why are you rinsing it out afterward?
Yeah,
I've not done that.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So what happens next is the case is quickly ruled out as a suicide, and that's simply because Barschel follows almost exactly a suicide instruction by the German Society for Humane Dying, which I'm not going to go into detail, but you take a bunch of pills, you drink alcohol, and then you undress and step into the water and lay in a way that when you fall unconscious, your head falls. And of course, we know that that's not what he did. He kept his clothing on, and his head was above water.
Yeah, I did read as well the combination of the 8 drugs that was in his system was very odd and unique. Like, it would be very strange for someone to, like, there's way easier ways to commit suicide with drugs. The fact that, like, the combination of drugs that were in his system were, like, it stumped the people that were analyzing his body. They're like, why are these all in there? Like, it was just odd.
What I've also seen is that some of the drugs were not available in Germany, Switzerland, Spain. And if he planned a suicide, he would have had a timeline of maybe 10 days or so after his resignation, because before that he was a governor. He doesn't have time to plan anything. He has to be a governor. So can he get all of these drugs in 10 days? It's hard to believe. But
he was gone for 2 hours, right? Post the hotel, right? 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
In his suitcase, was there any bags that can possibly? No.
Not really.
I wish I could do like more research on the whatever the drugs were, because like, you know how like the KGB used to use a specific drug to like to kill people, and like the North Koreans had used like a specific drug as well, to kind of like link it to like, okay, what could it be linked to? Because like I remember there was a case in I think in England where like somebody from Russia had assassinated somebody else with like, it's almost like their trademark, their signature on an assassination of like, I use this drug. You know what I mean? I wonder like if it wasn't found in Germany or Spain or any of those places, if there was a country that like they're known for using one of those 8 drugs.
Yes, you're saying.
Or if it was just a random like assassin or something. But yeah,
I have looked into his drugs. I haven't found anything linked to anybody, but I have noted down I have not noted down what they're called. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
But basically, everybody initially believes it to be a suicide, based on what they knew at the time. But this hypothesis that it was a suicide, that would be challenged in 2 major ways, which I would go into. And first, we have to go to 1992. This is 5 years later. And Rainer Pfeiffer comes back into the picture, and he dumps his girlfriend, who vows to take revenge on him for that. And he tells the press that he had secret meetings with a guy called Nilius, who gave him 50,000 marks in cash at different Autobahn rest stops. And so 2 journalists from Der Stern look into this, and they actually find evidence. Who were there at these rest stops confirming those meetings. And who could this Nilius guy be? Well, maybe it was Klaus Nilius, press secretary for the Social Democrats. And so they confront Nilius. He admits that he gave Pfeiffer the money, saying an anonymous construction businessman who is close to the Social Democrats and had given him the money. The problem is no one believes Nilius' story, and so a few days later, Social Minister Janssen felt sorry for Pfeiffer, and over the years collected 50,000 marks in his kitchen cabinet for him and gave it to him.
I'm sorry, how long, what was the timeline? How long was this going on after the death?
This was 5 years later.
5 years later, okay. Wow, and the journalists are finding out more than the freaking Swiss police, man.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And as you can imagine, the guy Janssen saying he collected 50,000 marks in his kitchen cabinet is such a ridiculous story that they start a parliamentary inquiry into this conduct dubbed the Cabinet Inquiry. And we don't know where the money came from. They never said. We know that the Social Democrats, the mother party, was not in this, so they had to get it from other sources. But over the course of the inquiry, it is revealed that Nilius and Janssen were in constant contact with Pfeiffer throughout the campaign of 1987, and even introduced him to journalists Der Spiegel, which gave him 200,000 marks and published a story. And Engholm, who is now governor, he said in the first inquiry, Barschel, that he knew everything from reading the newspaper, he now admits that he knew earlier and didn't do anything because he had hoped that he could win the election by appearing as a victim of abuse and garnering sympathy from the public. And so for lying under oath, he has to resign. And basically in the second inquiry, a lot of Barschel's name gets cleared in major ways. While he is most likely things Pfeiffer did, but he probably didn't tell him what to do, and thereby it questions the motive of a suicide. Because his motive, it was believed before then, was that he was caught red-handed doing dirty deals and, took his life because he couldn't see a way out of it. And so that puts more emphasis on the fact that he was trying to clear his name and maybe didn't know that much about it. And then the second major point, which led to the German police investigating this as a murder, in the family of Uwe Barschel, they believed it was murder from the day one, basically. And so they hire a renowned Swiss toxicologist to investigate his death, Hans Brandenburger, and he looks, basically what he looks into is, where was the medicine? Was it in his stomach, in his blood, in his urine? And he finds that the first three medications, which are supposed
to what? Sorry, you cut out. That are supposed to what?
They're supposed to knock you out.
Okay.
Yeah. They were found in his urine, and then the fourth one was found in his blood. And what that basically means is he took the first three medication hours before he took the death-bringing fourth one. The problem with this is, if that timeline were true, he would have been already in a coma when he had to take the rest of the medicine, which means someone else might have given it.
Yeah, he would have been unconscious by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You think
yeah.
But that's weird too.
In my head, if he did commit suicide, he didn't do it alone. If he did commit suicide,
yeah,
that means he had help to commit suicide.
There's a third theory that he had help, which is also prevalent nowadays in Germany.
Oh, really? Like an assisted suicide, kind of?
Yeah. Which, the thing is, assisted suicide is kind of legal in Switzerland, but I think you have to have, they don't just kill anybody.
You have to sign it, right? You have to sign it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine
you have to be in terminal illness or something like that.
So so those three drugs, right? He would have to take, and then someone would have to inject the fourth drug.
Exactly.
And was there any I don't know if you've done this specific research. Is there any like marks on his body that had injections?
No.
What?
So Hans Brandenburger, who made the study, he argues that it was injected through the skin or through his anus, basically.
What?
Okay, now I'm thinking because if we think about the timeline again, the different times of people going and checking on his door, it's almost like somebody could have went in, like changed the Jack Daniel's bottle or in the wine or anything, but in the Jack Daniel's bottle maybe, and then he drank it, and it would have made them easier for them to come in and kill him later, because he already would have been in a coma.
So the thump hit the head.
What was the timeline again? Do you have that pulled up? For like the latter half, like after the thump, because I would imagine the thump would have been like he took the
thump
drugs.
Was at 4:00 in the morning. So
okay,
that is we don't know when he died. So
that would make sense if they came in, and the maid came in before or after that.
Before.
She came in. Let me see. She came in before.
Okay. So she could have came in, switched the Jack Daniel's bottle. He took a sip, like, maybe, hey, this one's on the house or something. He takes a sip, thump, he's down, and then later on, I'm trying to think of the doors switching. Maybe they went in, moved him to the tub, injected him or whatever, and then they dipped. And maybe like washed out. They thought, I'm going to wash out the whiskey bottle or whatever, and I'm going to dip.
Yeah, and of course, it would if we go with Brandenburger's theory, on his shoes and also on the left side of his finger, under his fingernails, are traces of DNA, which is used to inject medicine into the body. So that's a strong indicator that somebody else may have injected medicine into his body.
Yeah. And that could have been too, like maybe he wasn't all the way out yet. Like, he still was like kind of like into it when they came back, and that's how the scuffle started. They're like, oh, like then they got him in there, and man, that is so weird. It's like it's almost really obvious, but I know like weird things occur in our life and in the world. But that is really weird. That is really. It's almost like you can almost paint the picture yourself about what happened.
Yeah, and it's still very mysterious. As we, I strongly lean that he was murdered based on the evidence, but I'm not going to be there and say, listen, group killed him or anything. Yeah. That's very hard to grasp at.
I do have a few here that suggest, I don't know if you have, but I have a list of people that may have been interested in the involvement of his assassination. I don't know if you're going to get into that later, or if you mind if I read a few of them.
Before,
you can.
Can I say one thing? Yeah. Where was his aide? Did he have an aide at all?
Aide?
Yeah, like did he have like someone who accompanied him on this trip, or was he just alone?
No, he was alone.
Okay.
So the first one was there's a theory that Barschel was assassinated by Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, due to his alleged knowledge of clandestine Israeli-Iranian arms deals, which you had mentioned earlier. He had hooked up a meeting between Israel and Iran, right?
Iran. Yeah. I looked into this. There's a book by a former Mossad agent who argues that. The problem is, first of all, he stopped working for the Mossad in 1986. So this is hearsay, what he writes.
Okay.
And the problem is also the timeline doesn't exactly fit. Because remember, Barschel wanted to go to Zurich first.
Yeah.
Only that when they couldn't, that he went to Geneva. The Mossad agent claimed that they set this elaborate trap for him in Geneva, which is not.
Yeah. And then the other one is the Iranian retaliation. So there's another theory that he was targeted by Iranian operatives after intervening in a submarine deal involving a Kiel shipyard. And so there was like, and then he had interference, disrupted significant financial interests. And then there's another one, the East German Stasi, or the Soviet KGB. I don't know what this is, but I guess that one was just to more cause disruption and chaos within Germany. And then a weird one. Oh, you got something on
that? And say your last one, and then I'll go into the police investigation into.
The last one, of course, everyone likes to blame the CIA. So the CIA involvement, and it was just. Is more like, I guess, a speculative theory, but it was just saying that he had potential knowledge of sensitive information with dealings such as the Iran-Contra affair, and it just made him a liability. So I guess they didn't want him, giving out concrete evidence that could expose them on that. So, I mean, which isn't crazy, but at the same time, like, it just seems like they're grasping at straws at that point. However, unlikable guy. A lot of people didn't like this guy.
Yeah.
No, I have to say, from what I've read about him, I don't like him that much either.
Yeah.
But so basically, the first clue that when they reopened this case in 1994, and they asked the BND, which is the West German intelligence, do they have information on Barschel? So they claim that he was killed by the Stasi, which is the East German secret police. And so they look into his contacts in Eastern Europe. And there are some weird things here. So according to the documents by the BND, Barschel was a broker for illegal arms deals in Eastern Europe and was also involved in the Iran. And what
I'm
we
sorry,
know
the last
is,
one was, you broke out one more time. What was the last one?
He was involved in the Iran-Contra affair.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so what we know is since 1979, Barschel visited East Germany 19 times officially in private trips, and according to his drivers, multiple times, unofficially, where they just got waved through. And that's, first of all, I want to point out Barschel, public at least, is a strict anti-con. Yeah. So it's weird that he even goes to East. And so he claims these were private trips to look for his ancestors. Later, he claims he looked for biotopes, and there was one trip to Czechoslovakia, which he claims he went on holiday. Which that is, I don't believe that for a second.
What was the rule during the East and West German during that time? Like, could you just go across, or did you need specific visas, passports? Like, or did he bypass that since he had like a political affiliation? Like, how could?
Well, that's the thing. You needed to give a reason why you came, and you could say I'm visiting my parents or something like that, and they would they would check your car and stuff like that, and they would let you through. But he never got checked. They would just wave him. He wouldn't even have to show his passport. He was like, "Oh, Barschel, you can go."
Yeah, I just listened to a podcast of a KGB agent who would always go into West Germany, and that was one of the things they'd always just wave him through. Like that was a checkpoint. He knew that he could just get through. So
the thing about Barschel is he was surveyed by the Stasi, the East German state police, since 1975. And of course, his travels when he went to East Germany, his day-to-day activities were almost completely protocoled. And while there were no surveillance protocols that are declassified, it's pretty clear that they probably listened in on his conversations. But we don't know. They might be classified. They may not. We don't know. The only ones I saw were the ones where they put down his day-to-day activities. Yeah. And some of his phone conversations in the car are.
Yeah, the Soviet KGB one, actually, I like that one a little better too, because we had mentioned earlier that the KGB was notorious for using drugs to assassinate people. So, yeah, that's interesting.
So what he did in East Germany, he had excellent contacts with politicians, both high and low-level politicians. And in one of his unregistered visits, he inspects the secret weapons warehouse in Kabelsdorf, something he shouldn't even know about. He also met Stasi arms dealers in the Hotel Neptune, popular resort, West business. And then, what we also know, in 1986, a German newspaper reports that the German shipping company HW delivered submarine blueprints and submarine parts to apartheid South Africa. South Africa at the time was embargoed when weapons. Now, while Barschel claimed at the time that he didn't know anything, I don't believe that for a second, because the shipping company was owned partly by the state of Schleswig-Holstein, and Barschel sat on the board of the company. So it would be negligent of him not to know anything.
Yeah. And he is famous for like doing something and then crying about, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got a history of that.
Exactly. And then according to his Stasi file, even after the deal got revealed, they continued the deal. The problem is the West German government, because the chancellor had personally given his word that the deal would not continue, they needed some kind of plausible deniability that they wouldn't be involved in it. And so they make a deal with East Germany. East Germany at the time was almost bankrupt. They needed a lot of money from wherever they could get it from. And so West Germany would deliver all the parts that are legal to export, and then East Germany would deliver the illegal. In exchange, they got some of the profits, and they got a kickback, and this is important, a South African cruise ship at a reduced price. And now what we know from Barschel's Stasi file is the East Germans didn't want to pay for the ship at all. So Barschel introduces a West German business person to take over the tab, basically. What we also know from his Stasi file is he had a lot of sexual contacts with prostitutes, which is really weird if you think about it, because he's giving a foreign government potential blackmail material
Yeah.
There's also his trips to communist Czech Republic. He stays there for holiday reasons, and while we don't know exactly what he did, because there's a fire at the resort he stays in, which destroys all the records.
Of course.
This guy's dirty. This guy is so dirty.
The Czech secret police believes he's involved in arms dealing, writing in a secret memo that classified, quote, Uwe Barschel uses provisions that he got for West German weapon contracts into Chile and the Middle East for the election campaign of the Christian Democrats in 1977. That's what they believed.
Do you think that this guy was like compromised by like East Germany, or like was he like did he like if it was blackmail or not? Do you think that the KGB or somebody was possible like they had a hold over him, or do you think that he was like working individually and he was just trying to make the most money he could, he was just trying to like improve his own career?
The thing is, I always wondered about the sexual contacts. Why would you do this, even if you're there? It deals with yourself position. The only explanation I can come up with is they wouldn't do anything about it, and so why would he know that? And I think because he brought a lot of money to East, so they obviously like you. Everybody likes the golden boy who brings, right? And so he was that person.
And didn't he call out the other dude for like sleeping with prostitutes and like?
Oh yeah.
So he thought because he did it, probably he thought everybody was like that.
Yeah.
Man, he was doing it, and he's trying to ruin this guy's career by saying the other guy did it. That's crazy.
There is also, there are also other. This is also a weird thing. There are other informants, but they would later be revealed to be agents by the BND. And so, while they found a lot of evidence, shady stuff, they couldn't find any evidence that linked it to his murder. But we know from these files that he was involved in these activities.
So, is there more evidence for a murder than you'd say, or more evidence for a motive for a possible committing suicide?
It for motive, I would say.
Okay.
Then there was a very surprising lead. Josef Messerer, who was involved in international arms trafficking, he gets involved in a red light violation. The problem is he claims that he couldn't have violated the red light as he wasn't in Munich at the time, and he gives as evidence his calendar that he was in Geneva. The timeline is he was in Geneva a few days before Barschel's death, including the day of his death. And his calendar shows that he met various people. He met both Ahmed Khomeini, the son of Ayatollah Khomeini, and Barschel a day before his death. Next to Barschel's name is the word end.
What?
And then, he then makes a statement that he met everyone except Barschel, and he also claims that he put the name Barschel in his calendar after Barschel's death to memorize that he had died. And so he claims in the police interrogation that there was a meeting in Geneva about trafficking between Barschel and various people, including, and there was some kind of disagreement, which led to the Iranians declaring that he must be eliminated. And he also makes the claim that they had drugged him with a whiskey bottle, which was not known at the time.
Whoa! And who was this?
So
The Iranians?
Knowledge.
The Iranians?
Yeah, the Iranians.
They were saying it was drugged. Okay. Dang.
Yeah.
Then there was the lead of Werner Maus. He is a top agent for intelligence. He's like the James Bond kind of a guy. And he was at the neighboring Hotel Richemont at the night of his death. And he claims that this was a coincidence.
Oh my
as he
God.
was involved in German hostage negotiations, which could be confirmed. He was involved in those conversations.
But that could have been set up.
Yeah. And there is something that corroborates the story. Eike Barschel, his brother, hires a private detective, Jean-Jacques Grissen. He worked for Werner Maus. And Grissen claims that Maus, on the night of Barschel's death, had contacted his phone and something big has happened. He should prepare. And What we also know, at the time of the death, Gleason worked for Maus and rented a room in the Hotel Beaurivage for. He was supposed to make noises at night at the hotel and check how the guests react. He also said that he had to install surveillance equipment in rooms, which Maus denies.
And Maus was with who?
He was with the BND, with the West German intelligence.
Dude, there's like, it's like everybody.
There's a lot of people.
I think it's a fact. This dude was murdered. This dude was assassinated. It's just like a question of who.
The problem, and this is a major problem for the police investigation. Usually, you have a few leads at the beginning, and then it kind of crystallizes around a certain area, and then maybe something in this area has happened. With Barschel, you have a lot of leads at the beginning, but they never go anywhere.
Yeah.
So I can give you more. There's something weird with Gleason as well. He investigates, obviously, Barschel's death, and he finds a crown witness who claimed to know how Barschel died, and he invites him into his agency, but the witness refuses to talk and invites him to Zurich. And then on the 9th of November, 1992, Gleason goes to Nyon, meets a journalist, and tells him, I met this dangerous person, and I'm going to solve the case, and so on. After arriving in Zurich at 10 o'clock at night, he talks to a 40-year-old African prostitute in French. He follows her into her suite. 20 minutes later, he dies of a heart attack.
That's what I was
thinking.
Wait,
the police guy? The police died of a heart attack? Or the guy who's supposed to meet?
Gleason, the private detective, dies of a heart attack.
That's what I was thinking originally. Whenever you started talking about that this guy had a history with prostitutes and there was 2 wine glasses, I was thinking right off the rip that a prostitute killed him. Not just any prostitute, but like, as you probably know, a lot of spies, most of the time spies are women because they can easily manipulate men and they can get into places that men can't get into and they can get information that men can't get into. So it's very possible that they could have just had a prostitute when he was out walking around for 40 minutes or you know what I mean? Like
that's a good theory.
Yeah.
And that's why he had 2 wine glasses. You know what I mean?
Maybe. The case with Gleason gets weirder. The police
get weirder. This is crazy.
So he met with this source, and the police in Geneva confiscate the material, even though they know the contact that he was supposed to meet. It never appears in the. And to this day, the police in Geneva refused to release the name. And there was an investigating judge, Claude Nicole Nadine, in Switzerland, who wanted to give an interview about this, but she doesn't get permission. Instead, public prosecutor Daniel Zappeli gives a statement, even though he wasn't really involved in the case, and in 2007, he reports on Swiss television that the dossier surrounding the witness can't be released because it's, quote, classified, and that the case got closed as the statute of limitations for murder in Switzerland ran out. So even if
why would it be classified?
Barschel got murdered.
Why do you think it'd be classified?
That's
like what would be the reason they would give?
Why
would they give that reason? What for a suicide? You know, like what's the possible? I bet they don't even give a public statement about why they would like.
No, they did not.
Yeah, a suicide's not classified.
Yeah,
that's strange stuff surrounding this case, and then again, Gleason thought he solved the case, and there is it gets even weirder. According to the criminal investigation in Germany, they produce a witness that has ties to the Camorra, which is the Italian mob, and he claims to have been in 2 mob friends in a bar in Bonn, the capital of West Germany, and he waited outside as they were speaking. Later on the way home, one of his friends mentioned to make sure a politician remained silent. This politician, he claimed, was involved in arms trafficking and was German, arms dealers with a German man he calls the secretary. Later, the friend mentions Barschel by name. And the witness is later revealed to be someone Vincenz E. In Germany, the last name is always hidden. So you only have E as the last name.
Mm.
And it was interesting, after they revealed that the German police was looking into this, to investigate death threats and of the mob. And the problem is, of course, the German police couldn't find any evidence that they were fair except witness. So after that, they looked into his Middle Eastern contacts. And again, the German intelligence service, BND, comes into play. They gave the state attorney a file which highlights Barschel and a son of Khomeini. A bodyguard worked as an agent for the German government and made statements in their story. He claims that the son and Barschel had some kind of disagreement, and that it was then decided that Barschel has to die. And this story is corroborated by, and I'm going to butcher this name, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, former president of Iran, who still has contacts in the government and who claims that the Iranians found out about Barschel wanting to talk and that they wanted to eliminate him. And he makes, the president of Iran, makes a very long but juicy statement. If it's okay, I can read it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
After the war between Iran and Iraq in 1981, there were three groups in Iran that wanted German weapons. The Iranians wanted three different committees, but the Germans negotiated them down to the other two committee chairmen normally active. One of the committees was ruled by Sadek Tabatabai, who had contacts to the German foreign minister Genscher. The other two were led by Mossad Rafik Daoust, with Rafik Daoust becoming the main buyer of weapons, Tabai supplying contacts. After Alexander Haig became Secretary of State in the United States, Haig had many contacts in Germany and since Haig had German connections with armament, Germany became a center of Iranian arms trafficking. The son of Khomeini controlled the arms deals. Barschel had a connection with the son of Khomeini in Switzerland, which Barschel visited often to German arms deals. Through sources in the army and in the foreign department, Barschel in 1980 part of the Iran-Contra affair was about a weapons deal in Tehran, which came from German NATO supply, while Barschel in Iran officially played the governor. Secretly, he was the broker of the deal. Barschel had American connections. Happened. So Barschel met the Iranian envoys in Switzerland, specifically the men Tai and Rafik Daoust. After his murder, our contacts in Iran told that his death was in connection to arms trafficking. We got the answer from Khomeini that if anybody talks about weapons, he has to die because of the role that Germany plays. Barschel wanted to make the deals public and therefore die. So that's his statement. So Bani Sadr then says that after the first interview with the German police, 5 serious threats to his life have been made. He also names a couple of sources, all of which can't be found, and gives as evidence for this crime the calendar of Josef Messner, which his sources had acquired. And there is some evidence that Barschel was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. There's a photo of him and Oliver North, and a Stasi spy at a secret conference at the Hotel Atlantic in Hamburg. While Iran-Contra was already public knowledge in the United States, there was no evidence, and the Reagan administration was cleared of all charges. But if Barschel knew more about it, and he would have made that public, that could have changed.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. So like it could have been public and they could have been found innocent. However, he could have had information or blackmail or something on somebody that they could have gone back and found that was the wrong ruling. Like they could have been found guilty for it, you know?
Yeah, and there's a second point that I would also make. The role of Barschel in the Iran-Contra affair is unknown. We don't know what he knew about it. But that doesn't mean he wasn't in danger. Even if he didn't know anything, he could have been suspected by other groups that he knew more than he actually knew. So there's an expectation game. This guy's involved in all sorts of deals. Maybe he knows stuff that, we don't even know.
This guy is just like, do you think that he was just like a adrenaline junkie? Like he loved to just do things that got his heart racing? Like why was he involved in such crazy stuff? Do you think he just loved the
adrenaline?
Yeah, like
loved knowing.
Well, it's what we know is that he obviously abused a lot of medication to deal with the stress of his job. And so it's hard to say. I mean, also in those times, this was because in Germany in the late 90s, there was a big campaign finance scandal for the Christian Democrats where they got money from weapons contracts and stuff like that. It could have something to do with that. People didn't look that much into campaign finance rules back then.
Yeah. And two, like maybe you do it once for a little bit of money and now you're locked in with blackmail, now you're just like, you can't get out. And that would explain too I know on the podcast I mentioned earlier with the KGB agent, they did mention that like people would hit a limit. Like they would, like you could use somebody for so long and then it would start like stressing them out and pushing them to a level like that they couldn't handle anymore. So,
and we know again from his Stasi file that he was willing to talk. He, in 1986, he is on the phone with a CDU, a Christian Democratic politician. We don't know who, but he's on the phone with him, and he at one point yells into the microphone, "If the people in Bonn let me take the fall, they're going to get to know me." And so it's possible that the Stasi got a hold of this conversation, and it's possible that other intelligence services got a hold of it, and they said, well, maybe he knows more. Maybe he's a danger to us too.
He seems like a really egotistical guy, like full of himself. He like the prostitutes, the slandering his opponents, trying to do anything for money. And then I guess it is sad too. You kind of have empathy. Like if he was blackmailed and then turned into all this, but that is the perfect person to have in your pocket. You know what I mean? Because they're willing to do anything. He already is that kind of guy. And he's probably easy to get blackmail
ambitions. He had ambitions to become chancellor,
Yeah.
So there's a relationship. He was a very ambitious person. So the thing is, why I think he got murdered. Look, I don't know if he had connections to Iran-Contra or if that was all true. It sounds like a lot of hearsay, but I just think a suicide is unlikely. He was not in a state of mind where he was wanting to commit suicide.
Yeah, I saw his wife. They asked his wife and who was it? His son, was it? That they
his brother, I think.
His brother, yeah, and they were like, no, he wasn't. Which suicide, like most people don't know that someone's going to commit suicide. They can be happy and stuff, but like you said, like after the plane crash, he he had a newfound thing for his life. He was Christian Lutheran, you said, I think. So
yeah,
I mean, like. And then he had all the information from the photo and the notes and everything. Like, it just seems like, I think, like, just from hearing this, I don't know for sure, but to me, it seems like almost 100%. All the other things adding up. He had all these people that wanted to kill him. It's just like, I don't think there's a way it's a suicide. I think he was murdered.
Yeah. And then for me, what convinced me was the evidence, the wine bottle missing, the DNA evidence that they would find in 2012 that someone else was in the room with him. It's weird also that you would commit suicide and then you would tell your family, "Oh, I'm meeting you the next day," and
So
let me ask you this then. I think it was murder. What do you think?
I think it was murder too.
So let's just say it was murder.
Okay.
If it was murder, the real question is, who do you think did it? Out of all these different people, like who can you narrow it down to that you think?
That's the prize question, I think. I'm always skeptical when people say this various intelligence services are involved in this. But I would say probably disgruntled arms dealers is what I would think.
Okay.
That's most likely.
That makes the most sense too, I guess. Like, because I don't know what power, because it was after he had resigned, right? This was time out. So it's not like he holds power. It's not like he can do anything or change legislation.
No, but he was the day after his death. Let's say he would have survived. He would have been in a public parliamentary inquiry where he would have to give a statement, and it's possible that he would reveal things at that inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah, so he would have, could have thrown some. So yeah, I mean, I guess intelligence
bunch of curveballs.
Yeah, dude. So I guess intelligence agencies. Wait, going way back, The journalist that stole the notes. Did we ever find out what was on it?
Yeah, there is. I have a lot of this stuff. What's in the police report from a book, and they have the notes printed out completely.
Okay, but we don't know. Like, was there a specific agency or organization or like that those were specifically about? Because that would, to me, would be a big indicator of.
He didn't write about that. No.
Oh, he didn't. Okay. Dang, I don't know. That's weird.
The prostitute.
Yeah, it's a strange case.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Wait, was the who had the African prostitute again? That she spoke French.
The Jean-Jacques Grissen, the private investigator for the brother.
And he was in Zurich when he found her, or where was he?
Yeah, in Zurich. Yeah.
And in that investigator's autopsy, he had a heart attack, right? Or was it different? So he definitely had a heart attack.
He had a heart attack. There's no doubt about that.
The African
he had heart attacks
crazy.
Prior. But it's just strange if you have this interview of your life, which he talked about, and the journalist confirmed that he said it in those terms. You would see a prostitute before that? I don't know.
Yeah, go in there with pent up energy.
43-year-old prostitute. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But.
And that's also something that's kind of strange. There's so many weird twists to this case, and
I just like it that every time you pull up the carpet and you think you got everything, there's just more and more and more under there. It just keeps going, and there's just more and more.
Yeah.
You can't the more you think, oh, I'm gonna hone in on it, like you said, and I'm gonna come to the point. It's just it's like roots. They just keep branching off more and more and more.
Yeah, and I want to make this clear: the German investigation ended in 1998, and the case was closed as undetermined. As in, they can't establish if he committed suicide, got killed, or did assisted suicide. They don't know.
Do you think they know? Like that, like the classified documents. Do you think somebody knows?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe the investigators that they said the lead investigator Heinrich Wille, he wrote in his book that it's very hard to prosecute because you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
Like, he believes that the German government is withholding information, basically.
I think somebody knows. Yeah. I think someone's got loose lips and told somebody. I feel like somebody knows.
Yeah.
Somebody definitely, like, outside of that organization knows. Obviously the organization knows, but I think that probably some people know, but they just classified it because they're like, look, this is going to open up a whole new can of worms. It's over. Just forget about it.
Yeah.
And I can understand why, like, the German BND would classify, or the Swiss government would classify things. If your contacts get known in these foreign governments or whatever, because people are poking into those, they're dead,
Yeah, but that just means, like, there was contacts, that just means that there were people involved. Like, that's the only reason to classify is that it wasn't a suicide. There was people involved, and they could be trying to protect people. Like, I understand that. I'm not mad that it's classified, but that part, just that is proof to me, like, that there's something odd going on there. It wasn't just a suicide. Also, do you know in Switzerland, do they, like, in the United States, we have a thing like after a certain period of time, classified documents, people can access it through the Freedom of Information Act. Do you know if they have something like that, like after 60 years or after 80 years, like they can open it up?
I believe they do, but I haven't seen anything.
Because is that you said the whole investigation was from Switzerland, right? Who classified it?
The first investigation was in Switzerland, yeah.
And then the classified documents, that was from Germany?
No, that was from Switzerland.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And then what the German investigators looked at was his Stasi files. They are classified in Germany, but you need permission from an agency to look into them. And they got permission for some of them, but not all of them, which, another strange thing.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so Switzerland does have open, classified, and other sensitive documents after a period of time. So there's a standing 30-year rule. So according to the Swiss Federal Act on Archiving, documents are generally available to the public free of charge after a 30-year period. They did say there's some exceptions, which if it's like personal data or something, but if the documents containing personal data may have an extended retention period of 50 years. However, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer. It would almost seem like you could black out the names and stuff of like people, but you could still release the actual classified documents after 30 years, and then after 50 years, then you could like classify the names and everything.
So weird.
But
maybe one day we'll find out
who
this person was.
The date was, when did you say it was? It was the actual murder happened on...
it happened in 1987. The date was, I think, the 10th of October.
Do you think that, and you said it was closed in 97 was the last one?
In 98.
Or 98. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wonder if somebody brought this up again and dove into it and looked into the laws and be like, hey, y'all got to release this information now.
It would be interesting if somebody releases information.
Maybe this podcast, maybe you bringing this up now. After all this time, maybe somebody will get motivated and request the information from the government.
Any Swiss lawyers maybe look into it. It would certainly. I know this case is unknown outside of Germany, but in Germany, it was a huge deal.
It's kind of like Epstein for us.
Yeah,
kind of like Epstein for us, like
it's
how he died. How did Epstein die? Kind of thing. It's kind of like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love this conspiracy. This is like, because like you said, like I don't know anybody that's ever brought this up before. Like when you first brought it up, I was like, I thought it was something recent. I didn't know it was like this old because I'd never heard about it. And we're deep into different conspiracies. But this one, I like this one a lot.
Yeah, this one's awesome.
And I like the details. Like it's almost like a Nancy Drew game or like some like Sherlock Holmes, like the whole part about the hotel mystery. It almost seems like it could be the coolest like Hollywood movie. Like it starts, there's a murder, and then it goes back in time, and you don't know how the murder happens in the movie, but like it shows like his life, like with all the different like arms deals, the plane crash, all this stuff. But like, yeah, that could be a good one.
I have one quick question. His wife, did she get any attention after this? How was her life after this?
I don't know what her life situation was. I mean, you have to remember, I didn't say this. Her wife was a von Bismarck, so she's a like royalty. So she had it made, basically. She has a good life. But she was very involved in finding out, who, she believes it was murder and who did it. And she made some very questionable TV appearances, like one where she asks people in space if they have information and things like that. So her credibility is in question because of that.
Yeah, she shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have done that.
Part of it, maybe,
Yeah, I mean, when you lose somebody that is your husband, that it can mess with you. But I do often, like, it makes me start to, like, when people are like, I know them. It's like how we were talking. You can see it in their eyes. They're like, that wasn't a suicide. Like it couldn't have been. Like I know for a fact. But do you know who she claimed did it? Like you said, she had said some people did it. Like we're not saying this is credible or anything because she may have been crazy.
Yeah.
But who was her idea of who did it? Did she say?
I haven't seen statements where she made suggestions.
Or she could have just been saying she knows who did it, but she didn't want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has made statements that she lost faith in the government. That they were covering stuff up and stuff. That's what she thought.
Yeah, I'm right there with her. I mean, it sounds like people were covering it up. It's like a lot of different agencies were covering it up.
Start a protest tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem with this case is I don't think it'll ever get, somebody who was involved in the murder must, if he makes a statement and comes out at the end of his life and says, yeah, I did it, maybe then we'll know. But aside from that, I can't think that they would turn up any new evidence or anything like that. I think we'll never know.
Yeah.
Theories, mystery, conspiracy, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, Stan, thanks for coming on, man. It was good meeting you. Sorry we kept you up late, man. I know it's really late over there, but I'm glad we could finally link up and do it, man. Really am.
Yeah, it's fine.
we want to thank everybody for watching. Stan, thank you for coming on and talking to us, man.
Thank you.
Honestly, this one was crazy. You're really well spoken. I like how it's almost like a book, the way you painted the picture and told the story.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. But this is the Arcane Dialogue. This is Stan. You can see him on his gaming exploration YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm going to link that in the description below. I'm John.
I'm Josh.
And thank y'all for watching.